pursuing it more as a lifestyle change, right? For me, building in public is not a tactic. It's not a hack. It is a way of life. And
today we have a superb guest on the show. So hi KP, in your Twitter handle, you are dubbed as the Build in Public guy. So I'm very curious, how did you get started with building in public?
Hey everybody, and thanks Roohi for having me. So, I mean, it all started in 2018, almost serendipitously or accidentally, where my original intention was to build a no-code project and put it on Twitter and kind of do this over time, over and over again. And so I built this project called DoThingsThatDon'tScale.com, which still exists, and wanted to get feedback from people, how they felt, what I can add to it, and how it can make it better. So I put it on Twitter, and then I got instant feedback from other, founders and makers. So I thought this was fun, and I was surprised that I didn't notice this phenomenon before, and I didn't really try it before. So I was like, this is great. I'm gonna keep building no-code projects and putting them in public, as in putting them on Twitter. At the time, I had 414 followers. Now I have 32,000. But it's funny because even at that small scale, it felt like there was a constant feedback loop, and I decided I'm going to just, continue building like this. And I built over the course of, the 2 years, I think I built about 15 projects, everything in public, like even from the moment that I have an idea, even from when I'm purchasing a domain, my decisions around what I would put on the landing page, how much should I charge, everything was done, like almost my decision making was done in public by taking people's inputs. And, eventually people started calling me the Build in Public guy, and almost as a tongue-in-cheek reference, because I was always doing this. And I realized that there's a whole movement, of builders who are building in public. And I became, active in there. I tried to add value and, connect people in that movement. And over time, I became one of the leading voices there. But as a practice, I think building in public has been around for more than like 6 or 7 years. So it's not new, but I think it's caught a really exciting energy now.
Yeah, fantastic. I loved your points on how you kind of serendipitously started on Twitter, and then you kind of used it as a kind of feedback loop for yourself, and then how you became over time involved in the building in public movement. So I wanted to ask you if you could share any frameworks about using BIP, not just to secure podcast guests as I've seen you done on your Twitter, but also as any frameworks as well on how to create content using the BIP mindset.
I think the biggest shift I encourage all the listeners to consider is pursuing it more as a lifestyle change, right? For me, building in public is not a tactic. It's not a hack. It is a way of life. And that's why I was able to pull off so many other things that were beyond the initial use case I was using before, which is the no code, right? I was using it for my podcast guests. I was using it. Now I'm writing a book. I used it to pitch myself in public and get a book publisher, on Twitter. And so many things, right? I mean, numerous number of things. I can quote examples where I use building public. So I think the biggest shift happens when you realize that building in public is not a tactic or a hack, but it is a way of life. And then you start to get creative and apply the core principle behind it, which is, if you have an ask, if you have a particular thing that you want somebody on the internet to help you with, especially in a niche to help you with, the formula is being very vocal, public, and open about what you want, and making sure that you have enough social capital behind your ask. So what I mean by social capital is that you must have enough reputation or trust, built up trust or attention, in that particular niche or in that particular market segment for them to react to your ask or your offer. Otherwise, it's just going to be, it's going to be just diluted away or drifted away in the stream of infinite content that goes on the internet. So, that's the core principle, right? And it's harder if you don't understand the principle and you try to hack it, because people can see through that, and you would just kind of run into so many rejections, and it's going to dishearten you, and you're never going to try building in public, because you're like, I'm not getting the feedback loop, and I'm not getting people to do what I want them to do. what is going on? And you get into this whole cycle of like, am I not good enough? Is this not good enough? And I think that's all, unhealthy and not productive. The real question you should be asking is, it's not about self-worth. It's about, have I earned their trust and reputation and attention yet? In many cases, the answer is no, and that's okay. Early on, you may not have earned that trust from this community or audience, but if you can change that, you can fix it by giving more value, by being prolific in the way you keep giving value and creating content and helping people. And over time, that compounds, and suddenly you become such an authority figure, such an expert, such a beloved voice in the community that they can't help but help you.
Some awesome points, and I think the biggest takeaways for the audience today are being open, being public, and having some social capital behind your ask. So my next question is, so how do you kind of build this social capital?
It can happen in many ways, right? The crux of it is how do you build trust and attention with someone? Like, attention is basically by showing up every single day, right? Like, if my face is visible to you and familiar to you, for, I don't know, a year, you know who I am by default. It's kind of like how all the celebrities in Hollywood, like how does Chris Evans, or how does, I don't know, The Rock, or who's a big Hollywood celebrity, how is he famous in like a small village in India, right? Because he shows up on that channel every single day. Maybe there was a movie that they were playing every weekend or something. And so the familiarity aspect, I think, was hard for me to understand in the beginning, because I thought maybe I should not show my face. Maybe I should be like mysterious and like some anonymous account. But in sales, they say, like, people need to like you. And the way they can like you is if you don't have any if you're being authentic, right? You don't have a show. You're not putting on a show. You're just being yourself. And you're being authentic, and you're trying to, create familiarity with your audience or community over time. So what happened, like a light bulb went off in my head when I realized this discovery, I think 2019, because until then I was just like, I didn't show my face. I didn't do podcasts. I didn't do YouTube videos, or I didn't do any appearances, because I was like, who's going to listen to me? Who's going to see my face, right? But I'm like, no, it's not about me. Why am I thinking the whole concept is about my beauty or my face? It's not about me. It is about them. It is about the audience. And how can I show up for them? Bring my authentic self. I am the Indian, guy who lived in India, born and raised in India for 20 years, and then moved to the U.S. I'm an immigrant in the U.S. now for 11 years. That's my authentic story. And I will sound like this. I will look like this. I'm not, Robert Downey Jr. I am who I am. And I started taking pride in understanding that I am meant to be who I am. And if I can bring myself authentically to my community or the audience on the internet and show up every single day, with my face or with me or with my content, and say, here's what I'm here to add value for. And those micro content value that you do every single day, over time, over the course of 2 years, compound so much. And suddenly, again, over the course of time, you become such a prolific expert that everybody wants to talk to you, or everybody wants a meeting with you. Everybody wants a piece of, you and all that. So I think that's familiarity, right? That's how you build like familiarity / consistency and showing up. One part of it. The other part of it is, so I talked about attention. It's like a coin. The one side of it is attention. The other side of it is trust. Trust is harder than attention. I could create a scheme or, say something controversial on Twitter and create attention, right? For example, if I said something stupid or a racist or something dumb, of course I have the world's attention, but is it good attention? It's not, because you only just have one side of the coin, which is attention, but you don't have trust. Nobody will ever trust you to come on a podcast, or nobody wants to be inspired by you. Nobody wants to learn from you because you're an idiot. You just made a fool of yourself. The trust piece is where it takes real, authentic patience, but genuine care for your audience and community. If you can bucket all of the community and audience into, let's say, 6 people around you on a dinner table and say, how can I show up every day and what can I add value to these people? It is not complicated. The value can be something as simple as creating a curated list of, for example, I'm in the no-code world, curating a small list of top no-code tools that people can use. Or here's a no-code tool that I discovered on Product Hunt. I played with it. I made a 2-minute video. Check this out, my community. And so basically keep offering value and a value and giving without any expectations. Now that's the hard part. A lot of people give because they want to manipulate them into buying a product or buying something eventually. But it's a short-term tactic. Just like how you would not expect things from your family members. You just do it because it's the right thing to do and you're selfless at that point. Do the same thing. And that's how you earn trust. Because people will remember you as the guy or gal who followed through on the promise. If you say you're going to do X, do it. And be reliable and be honest, be candid, and just give value without expectation. So that will compound as well. And the combo of attention and trust is, to me, social capital. Over time, this builds and builds and builds. And like I said, it opens many doors. A lot of people will want to work with you. A lot of founders want your investment. If you're an investor, it's going to change your life. That's what changed my career, in my view.
To be selfless and as equating to trust, and then attention and trust is equal to social capital. So my next question is, so in your kind of narrative today, you kind of discussed a bit about immigrants in America and how you were also an immigrant into America. So my question for you is, so how can immigrants in America be better supported by policy, infrastructure, and just by the community?
Yeah, great question. I mean, I think there's a lot of efforts in that area trying to help immigrants, assimilate better into the country. And I think there's a whole wave of immigrants every year coming in, through as students, as I know you referred to earlier, Roohi, that you were a student here in the U.S. and I was a student here, 10 years ago on an F1 visa. So I think there's a lot of infrastructure that's, existing, but I think it could be much better. It could be much bigger. It could be much more welcoming in the sense that the paperwork and the loops and hoops that you have to go through to really contribute back into the American economy after you graduated college is ridiculous. And I feel like the options on the table were, at least this is 10 years ago, the options on the table were like just H-1B visa, like get a job. But once you got a job, you couldn't do side hustles. You couldn't you couldn't try out different experiments and business ideas, and eventually you leave this job to go get on that, new startup. And I feel like that's very limiting because this generation is the generation of entrepreneurs, right? We're not the 9 to 5, clockwork, office workers anymore. That was the previous generation. This current generation is brimming with ideas, brimming with new startup concepts. They want to create new technology. And I feel like the current visa system is still outdated and antiquated, that they're still viewing them as, oh yeah, you got an H-1B at Deloitte or you got an H-1B at, Delta Airlines, which means that's it. That's all you should do. You cannot do any side projects, cannot create a podcast, or you cannot create something that would make even a cent, right? Because they're so afraid. That feels like such a zero-sum game. And they're so afraid that you're going to take away jobs from the native citizens or Americans. And I feel like that's such a zero-sum way. I think immigrants and citizens should view being together as a positive some way. What can we achieve, things when we're combined, when we're blended? That's how you see the NBA, or any of these great athlete programs are. Like NBA is not afraid of the 3 immigrant players from Africa, or let's say we have right now we're talking about Mavs, which is the NBA Western Conference Finals team, Dallas Mavericks, and their top player is Luka Doncic, who is an immigrant from Slovenia. So Steph Curry, who's an American citizen playing, on the other team, which is Warriors, is not concerned that he's taking a job away from another local player. That's bullshit. You never even think about it that way in the sports arena. However, when it comes to economy and jobs, somehow we feel like jobs are just a finite number of jobs, and they're going to be taken away by some other people if they're if you're not letting, if you're letting people get visas that are more favorable to other projects and side hustles and other things. So I feel there's a lot can be done. I feel like the fundamental first principle that needs to be fixed is the mindset, which the lawmakers and the citizens, I think, should come to the table thinking it's a positive sum and not necessarily it's a zero sum, which means like, we're going to displace some jobs from Americans. I feel like if you know the stats, like more immigrants in America have created jobs in the last 10 years than even, 50% of all US startup unicorns were founded by at least one immigrant. So, I mean, it's just a hilarious thing to me, and I'm hoping and rooting for a big change. And I know if I can play a small role there, I will want to.
Awesome. I think your insights were great. So now I wanted to kind of pivot into the tech slowdown and how do you break into the market? Is it still possible and where?
It's a great question. I think the market conditions will vary, I mean, that's outside your control, outside all of our control. It wanes and, it has its own like ebbs and flows, right? And, it is down. The funding rounds are down. I feel like the capital is frozen, at least for the moment. But we've seen this, movie before. We've seen 2008 and 9. We've seen 1999, 2000, the dot-com bust. So, everything that slows down will have to accelerate again. And some of the best companies in the world were started during the downturns. So this is actually a ripe, fertile ground for real entrepreneurs and real founders. If they have a compelling idea, I think this might be a great market to get in because you're not faced with a lot of noise and a lot of unnecessary competition. Because people are being much more cautious. So I think that's one thing as a founder. Now, as an employee, you can still break into tech because, there are hiring. People are always hiring great talent. You may have to work harder to get into the companies as opposed to I think like a year ago, everything was on a hiring spree. Everyone was on, a crazy hiring spree. And now maybe you'll have to prove your merit a bit more. Maybe come up with, unconventional ways of standing out and doing your research and genuinely doing some of the work that you want to do for a particular startup ahead of time, create a Notion doc and document 5 to 6 ideas that you would bring to that particular job if you were hired and, send that over in your first meeting, with the HR person or whoever you're talking to. So basically tactics and things that will make you stand out are just pure, hunger and perseverance, and more importantly, putting in the work. Now is the time to, earn your job as opposed to someone handing it to you so easily. So I think that's a mindset shift as well.
I think your point on earning your job was very powerful. So earlier you had discussed about how you were going to write a book. So I wanted to kind of get your take on writing a New York Times bestseller and what's the power of manifesting and building.
So this all came about because I don't know, this was after me leaving on deck and I was just relaxing and it was so serendipitous. I think one night, I think I was taking a shower. This is super candid and random, but it was one night I was just taking a shower and it just hit me like a lightning. It just hit me that, hey, this is probably a great time for me because I'm between jobs and I probably will never have this free time that I have in the future. Eventually, I want to start a startup or something in the future, so I might get busier and busier. So what could I do now in this window of time that I would never be able to do in 5 years later? And I thought, writing a book. And I thought, wow, I have this topic called building in public, and I've been talking about it for 3 years and hundreds of workshops, podcast interviews, threads. I've done so much content on this. I'm like, you know what? It would be so cool if I accumulated everything and, and organized it in a easily digestible way for an average person in America or around the world to get to understanding what building in public is. And I thought maybe I should write a book. And so that's it. I just came out of the shower and I, put it in my phone. In my phone that I'm going to write a book. And so next day morning I woke up and tweeted about it saying, I'm going to manifest a book out of a tweet. So the tweet was that I'm going to write a New York bestseller book. And here's the thesis. And there was 4 or 5 tweets around what the thesis is, what the book is about, who it serves, its founders and entrepreneurs. And I actually at the time did not have a book publisher. because you need a book publisher if you want to like get printed traditionally. And my call to action towards the end of that, my ask of the thread was connect me with any book publishers you may know, or tag somebody who you may want to see working with me, and so on. And within 3 days, I got like lots of leads, and within a week, I haven't signed it, but I got like a very, very strong lead that I think I'm going to work with with that person. So it's again fabulous how powerful Twitter is, how powerful building in public is when you're being honest and open. And the manifesting part is, I feel like a lot of these things, when you have a very clear ambition and when you vocalize it, you kind of use that as your accountability device. That's how I think about it. And now I'm going to work my ass off to make sure that I sell enough copies so that I help enough people that it becomes a New York bestseller, right? And it's very hard. Like I was very nervous the night before to tweet about it, because I was like, what if I fail? What if I look like a fool? What if like it doesn't happen? But I thought the upside of this happening is far more powerful and life-changing, career-changing than the downside of this not happening. Who cares if it doesn't happen? No one's going to come after me, right? Like, it's not like a real bad thing. It's just I failed. It's okay. Also, it's a way to normalize failure. So that's it.
Wow, that's awesome. Kind of how everything came full circle for you with manifesting everything, and now you might be getting into New York Times bestseller. That's amazing. So I think some of the big takeaways for audience today is upside and manifestation and Twitter, power of Twitter. So I was wondering if you could kind of share your take on what's the power of Twitter and how to create opportunities, and kind of what was your experience like growing on Twitter, and how did you build that initial kind of circle of support?
The thing with Twitter is I think I have to wonder if it's the same with YouTube too, or any other platform too, but the first 1,000 is the hardest. The first 1,000 followers is the hardest, and it's almost unfair. Like, why that's so hard, but that's how it is. And so in the beginning, you are, you also are a little too much in your own head. So you're overthinking everything you say. You just don't have that ease. You don't have that conviction and the finesse, like the smooth, style in the beginning, because you're just so like nervous about impressing people or like trying to say the right thing and getting value out there. So it probably took 2.5 years or something to get to 1,000 followers. It's so freaking hard. And the 1,000 to 10,000 was less hard, compared to the first, one. But it was still, I remember like almost 2 years, I think it was 1,000 followers. I was still creating a lot. At the 1,000 follower mark, I think I took an intentional decision. This is like July 2020, where I said, I'm going to go supernova on this, because I know what's working. I know my voice and my niche is no code and build in public and founders. So I'm going to I've been creating like maybe, 3 tweets a day, or maybe like on a weekly basis, maybe like 15 tweets a week or something. That was my cadence at the time. And I thought, why am I limiting myself with an artificial limit? Like, who says that I can only create 15? Otherwise, they're going to unfollow. The ones who are going to unfollow me will unfollow me anyway. So I went supernova. I decided to go like to the fourth gear, in a metaphorical way. And I started creating 15 tweets a day. And I just started using a Notion as a document hub, and I created all my ideas there. And I would have like a note-taking system. So anytime I saw something interesting that would be useful for my audience, I would like document it. And then I started like going super hard on it. A lot of people are commenting. They were like, KP, you're like on fire. And I was like, yes, I am on fire, because I know what I'm doing now. And from there, I think it still took almost like 7 months, 8 months to get to 3K, almost like another 6 months to get to 5K. And then everything started falling in place. Once I got to 5K, 6K, from there, I was at a whole new level. In terms of even my ease of use, I became much more high conviction confident that I didn't care about 1 or 2 missed tweets. I only focused on the 1 or 2 great tweets each week. And I just kept going after. I still was doing like 15 or maybe 10 each day on average. And I got to 10K easily, and then from 10K to 20K very easily. From 20K to 30K was the easiest. Like, I slept on one weekend night and woke up next morning, I had like 3,000 followers. And it's so unfair. That's the whole point of what I'm trying to say. It's so unfair at the end when you're making these thousands and thousands of followers with like no effort. in the same way, it's so unfair in the beginning where you're trying so hard and yet you only get like 40 followers that weekend. But that's how it is set up. And I wish I knew this story and the secret, when I started, because I would panic less. And I think I would enjoy my scenic route of getting to where I am now with much more chill. I'm trying to apply the same lessons on YouTube, by the way. I just started my YouTube channel. I have 71 grand followers. That's it. And it feels like I'm speaking into the void. It feels like nobody's listening. It feels like I'm trying too hard. And I think I'm trying to remember my own lessons from Twitter is that, hey, in the beginning, it's supposed to be hard. That's why millions of people don't do it. Think about how many people actually are creators on YouTube. Very less, and same thing with Twitter. So I'm trying to get past the first 1,000 on YouTube. It may take a year and a half if I can be patient, because I know once I get to like the thousands, the ROI at the end is also unfair. And I'll get like, 40,000 or something on a month's time at the end. So trying to remember those lessons and apply it in the new platform.
Examples were great. And I think you are a good example of how if you double down on your niche and you set a frequency, you can definitely achieve a lot of success in the platform that you're trying to target. So my next question is, so what's your take on unexamined self-talk and journaling? Like you'd mentioned today that before you came on the podcast, you had dabbled a bit in journaling.
Yeah, it's a great question. I used to journal frequently back in the day, maybe like 2018 time when I read the book called Atomic Habits. It was one of my atomic habit each day. I'm less frequent now because my schedule is a little has been up and down, given that I have a newborn 1-year-old kid, and I just got off. I was out on deck. I was just all over the place, and so slowly getting back on the track of habits. And since maybe like 15 days, I've been journaling again, almost consistently every day. And I realized, like, when I sit with the journal and intentionally decide to write one page of something, it doesn't have to be anything. Sometimes this is going to sound super weird. Sometimes I sit there and write, I love myself. I love myself, and I love myself, and so on. And it's so hard to actually say that out loud, both to you now on this podcast, but also even in the book, because we have so many limiting thoughts and unexamined self-talk that is trying to like be a negative critic and say, why would you love yourself? Like, are you so vain? Are you so narcissistic? Or don't you know your flaws? Like, what are you talking about? What is great about you to love yourself? And stuff like that. But when I also write like I love my son or I love my wife, then I don't think about their flaws. I don't think about, any of the other things. And so I realized that, this is actually a harder challenge, and I need to ground myself to this truth that, there is this chatter in my head that goes on. Despite all my success, there's always this chatter that goes on that says you're not enough. You can't be content. You can't be patient. You can't be grateful. And my daily struggle is to sit there and fill up that page with words of affirmations and words of like, kind, love, etc., to battle that negative self-talk and basically kind of clear out my, mind's inbox, because it's filled with spam like this. And so by the 15-minute, 20-minute mark, I actually start feeling better. I start feeling, much more grateful, content. And sometimes I write a list of things I'm grateful for, like it's a giant list of 50, 20 things. Sometimes I make a list of key wins I had since a decade. The other funny thing is sometimes you sit there and I write, okay, small wins I had since yesterday or whatever. And my brain's it's got recency bias. It's always showing me, I got nothing from last day. You got nothing, man. Like, why are you? There's not much to celebrate. But then I zoom out and add perspective and say, let's make a list of all the things that all the wins I had since a decade, right? The whole 10-year span. Then do you have so many wins, including like the fact that I got my green card, the fact that I have my son now, the fact I got my job at On Deck, and the fact that I have Gary Vee on the podcast, and so many more things. So I then like get happier. So, I think the practice of doing it, I think is so effective. And I recommend it to all the listeners. It sounds goofy and sounds, kooky when I say it out loud that I love myself on a piece of paper, but there's some truth to it. There's some internal struggle to it if you really sit down and do it.
Yeah, that was fabulous how you shared about your own story with journaling and the power of journaling with the listeners today. So, my last question is, so what are you bullish on currently?
I am bullish on the creator economy. I think we're going to see a lot of creators who will continue to add value and build businesses around them. I think the word creator is a little misleading. I think it's more like an expert economy, in my view. Like you have to be an expert uh, to be able to create a business. Because like I said, creators sometimes means you just have the attention, right? Creators sometimes feel like the word really is referring to influencers, right? Like people on TikTok or Instagram or some Twitter influencers. But nobody will pay a dime if you just have attention. People want attention and trust, like I said. Um, to me, those two are basically expert. You know, when you become an expert, you have those two, and you have social capital, you have an audience. So I think that is a huge opportunity there. I'm trying to do it myself. I'm trying to create Gumroad products. I'm trying to create, my YouTube channel and all these things. A lot of this I want to do it for free, and maybe some of them I'll do for paid. But that's all. That's all. I want to do for a big chunk of my next decade. So that's what I'm bullish on, and we can talk about other things later.
Wow, that's awesome that how you're like so embedded in the creator economy and you have such a strong voice in the building in public movement. And I'm really excited for your new New York Times bestseller book. Now, just a small request. If you enjoyed today's episode, please rate and review the podcast in Apple Podcast. Or if you're listening on Spotify, make sure you follow there, subscribe, and share the podcast with other people. Hope you learned something new today and looking forward to connecting next week.